Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. I'm your host, Robert Steinman, Pale Robbie on the boards, and I guess I'm the ultimate rage. Is that okay? Ultimate rage?
That seems appropriate, yes.
Is that
I
okay?
see no evidence to the
That
contrary.
works.
Okay, excellent. Joining me today is Derek Heemsbergen.
I am Derek, Ultimate Ferret Trainer Heemsbergen. I'm everybody on the boards, and I never use the boards, so I don't know why I continue to tell you that.
It's pretty good. Ultimate Ferret Trainer. I like that.
Uh-huh.
We also have Michael Solosi. Solosi. Gee, God, I'm off to a good start today.
I'm Mike Soyosi. I'm the ultimate Sentai snob.
Ooh, that you are. But you're not
Is that
really
just-
a snob. You just like it a lot.
Is that
It's
Power
You do.
Rangers? That's Power Rangers,
It's
right?
Japanese. The Japanese show Power Rangers is based on.
Okay, all right. And then, oh God, I just remembered I can't pronounce Alana's last name because I'm terrible.
It's not hard.
No, there's literally a world capital that sounds just like it.
The Hague?
God.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, well done with that.
You're already there. Just make that plural, and you're
All right,
in.
all right, here we go. We also have Alana Hagues.
Hey everyone, I'm the ultimate sky pirate, and I'm diving falcons on the boards.
Yes, you are.
All right.
And Rob, I think you forgot to even tell them why we're here today. What are we talking about?
Yes, we are here to talk about Danganronpa V3. This is something a little different for Random Encounter. We're going to do a spoiler podcast where we're basically going to spoil the entire game, dissect it inside and out, talk about our favorite murders, talk about our favorite characters, talk about the giant controversial twist that has basically destroyed the internet right now. And so consider this kind of your final warning. If you have any interest in Danganronpa, the series as a whole, and you have not finished Danganronpa V3, I think you kind of have to do it, right, Derek? I think I'm right in that.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially, I mean, if you're a fan of the series at all, I honestly think even the Danganronpa 3 anime is really good. I've heard some people say that they absolutely hate it, which surprised me because I felt like it was a really good conclusion to the Hope's Peak trilogy. And again, since Rob already said this, you've been warned for spoilers. None of us assumed, I think, that Danganronpa V3 was going to tie into it because they made this whole thing about it's it's start of a brand new arc, and don't worry, you can play it without having played the others. But I think having played the first ones really contextualizes it, especially with that ending. So I think it's absolutely worth playing.
Yeah, and it is definitely kind of similar. We talked about it on the last episode of Random Encounter, but we talked about Blade Runner and how a lot of people were running around saying, oh yeah, you can go see Blade Runner 2049 without seeing the original. And I'm like, that's not true. I don't think you can really play Danganronpa V3 without playing the other ones. At least the other two main games in the series.
I mean,
you
can, but you won't get as much out of it.
You won't get anything out of it, I think.
I think you can
You won't.
skip Ultra Despair Girls and probably skip the Danganronpa 3 anime, but I would say 1 and 2 are required playing before V3.
Agreed. That completely almost spoils the entire premise of the first two games because
Right.
the ending of the last game, which we'll get to, is kind of shatters the wall between all three games.
Right.
Yep. So I guess we're going to get started. Again, final warning for people to jump out now. I highly recommend that if you have played any of the previous games, you play this one because, whoo boy, I really wouldn't trade my response for this game for the world because it was pretty cool. So the basic setup for Danganronpa V3 is exactly the same as the previous two games. You have 16 ultimate students, each with a special talent, placed inside of a school setting, and then the evil Monokuma, the teddy bear robot thingamajig, decides to start up a killing game and tells the kids that the only way they can get out of this prison is for somebody to kill one of the other students and get away with murder. Is that pretty? Feel like I just summed it all up right there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's perfect.
And then each student has their own specialty of some kind.
Yep. So in this game, you start as the ultimate pianist. Kaine? I'm so bad with the names. Kaede. I'm so bad with the names. I need to I'm going to pull the names up right now. I end up referring to them by color more than anything else, being the...
Oh.
Well,
So the pink girl?
I do the exact same thing for Sentai, so I understand.
Pink girl, blue dude that I'm really angry dies. That's basically how I do all these things. So... you start the game as Kaede, which I thought was really, really cool to start as her.
Yeah, I like Kaede.
Yeah, Kaede is a cool character for that chapter.
And especially since we'll get to this, but especially since the first two protagonists in Danganronpa are basically just bland, do-gooding, normal guys. Kaede is just a very she's a breath of fresh air and very different from Makoto or Hajime.
Yeah,
She's
she starts off.
adorable.
Yeah, she is, and she's willful in a way that I really appreciated and brought an interesting new dynamic to the game because like she's talking to Shuichi, the deuteragonist slash later total protagonist, about what he needs to do to like get his shit together, and she's just like, "Stop it! I don't want to hear it." And I appreciated how like from the get go, kind of forceful she was, and she was also like a beacon of hope for the cast, which plays into her like entire sort of downfall.
She's decisive and has a positive attitude in a way that's I think very likable and satisfying for a protagonist.
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more strength to her versus the other two previous protagonists who were a little bit more. Cypher is maybe a very strong word, not the Final Fantasy VIII character, but like as like audience surrogates.
Yeah, almost, I mean, almost they could have been silent protagonists
Yes,
in a way because in a way that a lot of them are supposed to be, like player characters that the player connects to in a way, but.
Yeah, and I mean,
I just found them boring.
And they do both take on some traits of their own. Like I think Naegi's whole arc is that he becomes ultimate hope, and his whole thing is he really is just sort of like relentlessly persevering in the face of despair, and that sort of defines him as a person. That maybe isn't the most interesting thing, but it is sort of what defines him. And then Makoto at least differentiates himself by being he's also emblematic of hope, but in a way that's like, oh, he's experienced true despair sort of as like the end all be all, not really the villain, but like one of the worst perpetrators of all of the horrible things that went on in the outside world of Danganronpa. Like his rehabilitation sort of plays into his character arc and I find that interesting too. But ultimately the way that comes across in their moment to moment interactions is just sort of like, they're the good guy who pushes everybody on. So I get what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the game opens up, and there are some hints at the greater mystery, which we'll get to toward the end. I don't. It's really hard to say like, oh, I figured all of this out. Like, and I don't mean to be like that, but when I know that there's a mystery, my brain goes into overdrive.
Me too.
Oh yeah.
I basically go down every possible path that the story can take. And so I'm going to end up hitting it for the most part. I didn't figure everything out with this game, but there's kind of a hint at the very beginning where you see all of the characters as non-ultimates. That I think,
they're all in school uniforms that aren't the same school uniform, but like are basically normal school uniforms that aren't adorned with the accessories that identify their ultimate talent.
And that's a big hint for the final reveal, and then they sort of black out and they come back and they're all ultimates again. And we have our first murder after all of the characters in a kind of really cool moment all decide we're not going to murder each other. Like, screw this game, we're not taking part in it, you can kill all of us, because Monokuma says, well, if you don't kill anyone by the end of the time limit, I'll kill all of you. And they're like, okay. We were clearly all friends. We can't remember each other. We all have token amnesia, but we're not going to kill each other. And then a murder happens, and that kind of spirals everything from there.
Right. Well, do you think that, was it really though in the beginning that they all decided that they were okay with dying? I think it was just more that they were like, we're going to escape. And we refuse to protect.
You have to do that silly little mini game, don't you? Where you have to climb right down the back of the shed, and then you had to go underneath, and you had to do like kind of gauntlet style thing.
It reminded me of Lemmings a little bit.
It does remind me of Lemmings a little bit as well. You have to constantly fail it because it's so ridiculously difficult, and you do end up going back to it towards the end of the game. But it's a nice part because they do decide like, no, we're gonna beat this killing game. Whereas in the previous games, that didn't really come about until maybe midway. But there are a couple of characters at this point that you kind of begin to think, oh, maybe they're going to do this and that. There's always a couple of those outliers. But it was nice to see that Kaede ultimately brought everybody together immediately with her kind of hope and her willfulness. So it was a nice start to the game. Obviously, somebody does die because Danganronpa, but yeah.
And there were parallels to what's the from Danganronpa V2, Danganronpa 2, the Ultimate Video Gamer. What was her name? Help me out here, Derek.
Chiaki.
Is it Chiaki?
Yeah. They don't come right out and say what happened to her, except in the anime, which was like god awful and horrifying,
Oh my
and
god, yeah.
like absolutely scarred me.
Chiaki's arc in the anime is maybe the most despair-inducing moment in an anime that is designed to do that. It's
Yeah, she's basically killed in
man.
front of her classmates to drive them crazy.
Right.
And it's like, and it's horrible. Like, it's god awful. And
yeah.
Kaede kind of fits a similar role to Chiake for bringing everybody together. The anime establishes that Chiake like unified the entire class, and Kaede does the same thing. And so I think everybody can see where this is going. Kaede's the one who commits the first murder. Rantaro, the ultimate, we don't know who he is yet, and I have issues with his character. We're gonna double back on that toward the end because I don't understand how that works. But Kaede decides that she's going to try to kill. She believes that somebody's in charge of this whole killing game, and it's one of them. And if she can kill the mastermind behind the killing game, then the whole thing will stop. And so she comes up with a big, elaborate, case closed, detective,
like Rube Goldberg machine, nonsense murder weapon.
But to basically get a giant shot put to crush someone's head in.
If it was case closed, though, she would be taking revenge for someone driving her best friend to suicide many years ago.
Yes. And,
which is about 70% of Conan storylines.
I have all the Detective Conans, and I need to sit down and watch them because they're like a total guilty pleasure. But so you play as Kaede during the trial. And she's actually trying to lead everybody to the solution that she did it because she knows if she gets away with the murder, they will all die, she will live, and instead she wants to sacrifice herself for everybody else. That's kind of epically awesome.
I don't think it's the worst idea to try and identify and target the mastermind if someone has to die to save themselves. Because, I mean, she commits the murder at the 11th hour of this limit that Monokuma set, like you said earlier. So it's like even when she's trying to murder someone, she has very good intentions.
Right.
Mhm.
And sort of like her, I don't know. I mean, her arc is really tragic because her end goal is to do something that's going to benefit everybody else there, and so she takes it upon herself to do that. And I really like that I think the game messes with you on two levels in terms of establishing the credibility of its narrator, which is one, like, she perpetrates the murder, right? And the entire time you're seeing opportunities. Like, if you go back and look at it all, you know where she did each of the things to like arrange the murder in such a way, like because when she was arranging the books, I was like, that's really suspicious. What's going on here? Why are they showing me a specific cutscene of her doing this? So
Yeah.
At first I actually thought that what she was doing was like she was arranging the books and it was setting up Shuichi to be the murderer the whole time, because it was like, oh, it's focusing on the two of them and how she's being really kind to him and trusting him, and he's taking advantage of her trust. That's what I assumed was going to happen.
I was with you. That's exactly what I thought was happening.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Mm-hmm. So that's an expert deflection on the game's part, and I kind of lost my train of thought. But I was going to say, like, I really appreciate how they make Kaede into this character who you're immediately very sympathetic to, and you're like believing in what she's doing, and you think there's no, so the game is setting up Shuichi to be the killer, and I'm smart because I figured that out, right? But then it turns out that nope, it's on its head. Actually, it's the other way around. So I mean, there's a lot of layers, I think, to Kaede's arc, however brief, that add to the game as a whole, like the fact that she is emblematic of hope, but then she herself is sort of crushed because she's not able to unveil the mastermind, and then she sort of got everybody believing in her, and then in a way let them all down. So
it was a bummer to me because I was really excited to play as a completely different protagonist, and not just because she was a woman, but because I felt like she had more personality than the previous two. So
Yeah.
I was initially really bummed, and then you take over as Shuichi in the middle of the trial because he realizes that he has to figure out that Kaede is the one who did it. And it's a good moment, and Shuichi, I think, is actually the most likable protagonist out of all three of the main ones. But it still bummed me out a little bit. I was really enjoying playing as a different character that felt a little bit more fully formed, but I think that was also by design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's I kind of like and hate that choice for a couple reasons. It's kind of an FU, like, hey, by the writers, hey, we have this really likable, cool, cute protagonist. Nope, guess psych, it's another boring white guy again. But
you mean boring Asian guy, right?
Oh yeah, yes. Sorry.
Yeah, hard time.
I got in trouble in a different podcast for a similar comment. But like, it's a bait and switch that's a little unfortunate, and I don't like that they killed Kaede right when we're starting to really like her. But I also appreciate that they're doing that just so the player never trusts the game. Like, because of this happened, now you're going to question every single thing that the game does, and basically not trust any death or any murder or any character. And I think that I appreciate that, but I'm still mad that Kaede died and would have preferred that she stayed the protagonist the whole time.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'm with you all the way.
She was definitely a breath of fresh air for the franchise. And I'd agree with Robin that I think Shuichi is probably my favorite of the 3 male protagonists in the entire series. But really, isn't it just a reflection of, even though you said, like, because I'm not just interested in her because she's female, but actually it's just a reversal of kind of, oh, you know what, we're going to do a female protagonist. Oh, no, we're not going to do a female protagonist. Why would you want that kind of thing? Like, we definitely do. We've been asking for it. But it's a really difficult, I think chapter 1, I think this is the strongest chapter 1 in the entire series.
I would agree.
It's also one of the most difficult because it immediately teaches you the main theme of this game, which I think we touched on a couple of podcasts ago, which is lying and this slightly lying to get to the truth kind of thing, and that's exactly what she did for a while. But it makes it a really difficult episode or chapter to accept, because you're going like, hey, I figured it out, but she lied to me and I lied to everybody else, and I don't really know how to deal with everything. And that's the kind of weight you have to carry throughout the entire game. Like, you have to lie to get to the truth. And
I completely screwed this chapter up. Like, I kept getting it wrong when it was like, you know who the villain was, and I was just like, no, like, this can't actually be happening. And I came really close to failing this chapter as a result of that. I think maybe it was my own brain did not want to accept that this was happening. And
Which is pretty brilliant, actually.
Totally.
It is, but
it's really good.
It is, but to be fair, I think I did text Derek and say this game just pulled some Heavy Rain shit, and I'm a little pissed at it.
Yeah, it did.
It is the Heavy Rain plot twist. It is handled much better than Heavy Rain, which just outright lies to you. This kind of bends the truth a little bit, and so I'm more accepting of it. And it also happens at the beginning of the game. If the game had been building up to this, and then it happened, like, if it had been like, Kaede was the mastermind the whole time, I would have, like, broken the Vita cartridge in half.
That's really subtle.
There's a famous Agatha Christie novel where the protagonist is the killer, and this first case reminded me of that one, because in the Christie novel, like, the way they show the events of the murder by sort of low-key, vague descriptions reminded me of this first case. Like, you're not allowed to leave that storage room during the investigation until you look at the shot put balls, and when you look at the vent in the classroom above where the murder happens, you have to look at the event, and Kaede sort of pauses and says, I did something, and then she's, like, late to follow Shuichi. Like, so there's vague things that she does while she's preparing for the murder that I think are presented in a clever way that reminded me of that Christie book. But yeah, I figured out who it was only because, like, the way that Kaede was pointedly saying to Shuichi, you know who it was, and I realized, oh damn, this sucks.
That's the other thing that I was going to say earlier, that when I lost my train of thought, was just that besides giving you these little hints that Kaede is the one responsible for that murder, they also introduce this mechanic that's new to the series of lying, of being able to turn around a piece of evidence and intentionally mislead somebody. And so, you know, I was like, that's pretty sketchy for them to introduce that when this whole game series is built around, like, proving the truth in these classroom trials. And the fact that she does that, and then it turns out that she's the killer, just totally throws your entire perception out of whack. Because you're like, oh my God, she was lying because she's the killer. Like, so when you do it for the rest of the game, there's always sort of that little bit of suspicion of, like,
Mm.
Should I be doing this, or will this ultimately backfire like it did with Kaede or whatever? So I think that was a brilliant thematic execution of a new gameplay mechanic.
Mm.
Now, I think it's important to point out here, however, as we move away from the first case, is that I personally felt like after the first case, this game kind of settled into a groove, and it sort of bored me all the way to the end. It switches over to the formulaic Danganronpa. Like, we do the school life thing where you get a couple of days to say hi to people. They always introduce like some new classroom where you're like, well, $10 says a murder happens in here with something that I've just interacted with. Like, oh, here's a fish tank and some piranhas. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. But I did kind of lose interest because I thought that first case was so strong that the rest of the cases up until the end, they were good and they were fun and they were like good little vignettes, but they didn't have the emotional impact except for one. Because we all love Gonta. Everyone kind of... I know.
Losing Gonta because of load screens is a little... Oh, man.
Yeah. I think a big part of why some of those other chapters don't feel as strong is, like, specifically, I think Chapter 2 is a really weak one. I think that case on its own, like, sort of in a vacuum, is a weak case because...
Is that the magician murder?
It's the maid who kills the tennis pro.
Yeah, because she kind of sucks. She kind of sucks. I hate her character. Like, she is just like the ultimate maid that was somehow like making political decisions.
She's the prime minister.
Like,
that twist was a little much. I thought she was a cool character on the surface, but with that reveal, it's like, oh, come on, this is a whole new realm of dumbness.
Yeah, that felt really out of place. And you also killed like my favorite character, Ryoji. Like that.
Oh.
Like I loved him, and then he got killed.
Oh, did you mean Ryoma?
Ryoma. Sorry. See, I should just have the goddamn.
Yeah, no. I have a wiki open right now with everyone's name, so I can double check before I try to say a word.
Yeah, Ryoma dies, and that just really bummed me out.
Oh man, yeah, because he went from like. You knew they were going to do it because he was like, yeah, go ahead and kill me. I'll sacrifice myself. I don't care. I have no reason to live. And then he slowly starts to warm up and defrost. And you're like, oh God. No.
You are so dead.
Gone. Yeah, but points like he has probably the most horrible murder in the entire franchise.
Yeah,
he's eaten by piranhas. Like,
he is.
Well, no, he gets drowned in a sink and then eaten by piranhas.
Yeah,
still rough.
A little rough. A little rough. Like that was intense. But
the fifth murder though is maybe I thought that one was particularly gruesome, especially since there was like the crime scene was so mangled that there wasn't a body.
That's the hydraulic press.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're all good cases, and I liked them. But I've said this before about Danganronpa. I think Danganronpa has a real problem with doling out the intrigue, where 999 and Virtue's Last Reward are constantly like giving you little snippets. Danganronpa is like, okay, you get your beginning, like several hints at the main plot, and then we're just not going to talk about the main plot at all again until the very end.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, there were a couple snippets like with the writing on the rock that popped up every now and then, but you're right; those are very low level teases.
Yeah, very, very low level. And so I was getting a little antsy. I started really strong on V3, and then I started, really getting distracted. I mean, it took me almost 2 months to beat this game, where like I would pick it up and play it for like an hour or two, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm not really feeling this.
There are sections where I think it drags a lot, yeah. I mean, I think they all do, but
The case that I actually ended up really liking, and I think we should talk about it because it's also the most devastating case in my opinion. I said to Derek, I swear to God, if this virtual world is the Strawberry House quest again.
Okay. It's not as bad as the Strawberry Grape House.
No, it's not. It's actually the Strawberry House done right.
Yeah.
Like, it's not so overly convoluted, and they have to explain it over and over again. And it actually makes sense in a video game sense, which was kind of cool. Like, I figured the only problem I had with this case, where you're in a virtual world and a murder happens outside of the virtual world, The only problem I had with this case was that I figured it out so quickly that I
Yeah.
was getting some of the logic wrong, because they want to breadcrumb you along, and I was like, no, I am ready to make the jump right now. What is going on? And the game was like, no, you have to do it in pieces. And I'm like, I forgot. So I have to pretend to be an idiot to get this right.
Yeah.
That was a little frustrating, but that was a really cool case. Although we lost Mew, who was a very fun character, the ultimate inventor / probably one of the most vulgar video game characters I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I don't miss her too much. Actually,
I got a little. I thought she was amusing at first because, like, hearing those obscenities, just even in her regular speech that wasn't represented in dialogue, like, you know, her little, you know, her little battle cry kind of things that she would say along with dialogue was quite amusing. But I had gotten sick of her by case 2 or 3.
I was surprised. I thought she would probably be one of the characters to murder somebody, actually. It was kind of weird to see it turn on its head, but unfortunately we had to lose someone who definitely shouldn't have murdered somebody.
So you find out during this case that Kokichi, who is the ultimate
Supreme
leader,
Yeah.
which then turns out to be ultimate prankster, which I really kind of liked. He coaxed Gonta, the sweet, innocent, ultimate entomologist, giant strongman, into murder. Because Gonta is now aware of how screwed up the outside world is, or he thinks he does, and so he doesn't want anyone to live through the horrible atrocities that are going on in the, quote, real world. Right. So Gonta was actually trying to save everybody, but it goes a layer deeper than that, because Gonta did it because he was pure of heart, but because he switched up how he got into the virtual world, he got his wires crossed. He doesn't remember why he committed the murder, and he doesn't even remember that he did commit the murder. It's like the cases that you hear about, like, one spouse killing another when they're having, like, a night terror. Like smothering the other person with a pillow, which I don't know, maybe that's just a giant ultimate defense, but like, that's terrifying. Like, that is absolutely awful.
For me, the shocking bit was throughout the trial, Gonta's saying that he doesn't understand, and you assume that because Gonta's dense, he doesn't understand what was going on in the game world, because it's a weird thing to understand. But then when you realize that he put in the connections wrong and literally does not remember anything from the game world, it like that, but I use my chopsticks in this hand moment just made me gasp aloud.
Yeah, that was an amazing reveal.
It was very clever and foreshadowed.
Very subtle, and subtle to the point where it didn't feel like cheating. It was not the heavy rain moment. It was a very, very well done reveal that was also heartbreaking, because Gonta is just this wonderful character that you just want to give him a hug the entire time, and now he's going to have to die, and that sucks.
It's like putting down a puppy or something.
Yeah.
It's like you get shooting the dog in Old Yeller or something. It didn't feel good. It made me sad.
Yeah,
and like, the worst part of it all is that Gonta thought he was killing them to spare them the reality of the outside world, when that's not even real either.
Yep. And so this also helps to establish that Kokichi is your giant red herring. Solosi, I don't know if you're aware of this, but communism was a red herring. So
communism was just a red herring.
Alana, please tell me you got that reference.
I did.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite movies.
Derek?
Simpsons? No, I don't know.
No, it's a Clue reference.
Oh, okay.
The movie
Flames
Clue, which is
coming out of the side of my face.
One of the best films.
Oh, rest in peace, Madeline Kahn, and the lady who played Mrs. Peacock, who died 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Eileen Brennan, that's who. Sorry.
So Kokichi is established as your giant red herring at this point. He coaxed Gonta into committing this murder. He is the ultimate supreme leader. And then they start to play into this idea that he is a remnant of despair. Somebody want to explain why that is significant?
In the previous Danganronpa game, number 2, they explained how Junko Enoshima was the mastermind of everything that happened in the first game.
God, I was flipping out. Like, if she shows up,
I hate her so much.
I'm so tired of Junko. We are all tired.
I liked the Junko twist in V3, but we're all sick of Junko.
Yeah, so Junko was sort of, the ultimate bad guy, right? And then the remnants of despair are the people who were brainwashed into following her in Danganronpa 2, and those are everybody in the main cast of Danganronpa 2 was a remnant of despair,
except
for Chiaki, right?
Yeah.
So they're the remnants of despair, and so Danganronpa 3 teases this tenuous connection between the previous games and this one by saying, like, oh my god, he's a remnant of despair. They haven't been eliminated, and he's in here trying to sow chaos. Okay, go ahead, Rob.
And at that point, I started going, all right, it is not that simple. So that's when my brain started to go into absolute overdrive. I'm like, there is no way that it is this simple. There has to be more to this. But Kokichi is established as your giant red herring. Then in the next case, somebody ends up dead, but we don't know who it is. And yes, we've skipped ahead a little bit, but I think it's mostly because the other two cases really don't have a whole lot of bearing. And also, I hate Angie so much. I
hate Angie. I hate Angie, and I hate Korakiyo. Like, can we just say Korakiyo has got to be the freakiest character ever?
Now, I think I shared this with Derek and Alana. But Rob, did you ever try to talk to Korakiyo as Kaede in Chapter 1?
No.
If you do, you have a conversation about Korakiyo's sister, and Kaede tells him, "Oh, of course I'll be one of your sister's friends. I'd love to."
Oh, God.
but yeah.
Angie sucked so much because Atua is with us. And I was like so happy when she died.
She was just a cult leader, yeah.
Yeah, but I thought she was going to end up being a murderer, and then when she ended up murdered, I was so happy. I was like, but yes,
and we did continue the tradition of Case 3 being a double murder in every game.
Yes,
we did, but also it was the worst double murder because I literally got it the second it happened. I was like, oh, it's the same person, and then it does the double of like, no, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. Stop, please. It's not funny.
And that logic part can get really frustrating, like I described with the virtual world case. It's like I figured it out so fast, but you're not asking that question. Like, I'm ready to go immediately to who did this, and
they're not asking you that. Yeah,
right. And so that was a little frustrating with the double murder.
Yeah. I knew it was Korakiyo the moment he did that seance, because like, okay, well, this is an extremely elaborate plot to kill someone in the dark room, and it took a minute for me to realize that both murders were Korakiyo, like partway through the case, I guess. But it was that one just went on way too long, and I was ready to, throw the book at Korakiyo.
That was your Strawberry House murder
around the interim, yeah.
But so we skipped ahead, and then we end up with a murder that we don't know who was actually murdered in a very odd plot point where now you have a robot in the middle of the trial that could be one of two people, and you don't know who it is. It's either Kaito Momoto, Luminary of the Stars.
I can't believe he killed him.
Or Kokichi, Professor Remnant of Despair. We all want him dead. Yeah, crushed in a hydraulic press, so they are just like Terminator paste at this point. And it's kind of, that was a very weird case because I really didn't care. Like, I'm sitting there going, we all know it's Kaito in there. Like, there's no reason for this not to be a major reveal unless it's Kaito and he's the one who ends up dead because we have to finger him as the culprit.
Well, the whole idea was like, they got into a fight, kind of. I can't remember the very specifics, but at the end, Kokichi was like, kill me, because one, I'm probably going to die, and two, it will screw up everything. He's like, I want it to stay, I want everything, I want to screw Monokuma up, basically, and the difficulty with this case for me was Kaito Momoto is probably my favorite character in the game. Kokichi is probably one of my least favorite characters. He was an irritating little brat, and he was like a really for me, especially with the whole Remnant of Despair, which, by the way, he's not. He's the ultimate prankster. He was a really cheap version of Nagito, I thought. Like, trying to be insane and crazy and like, guess what? I am the Remnant of Despair. No, you're not. You're so obvious. It just kind of pains me a little bit.
You're a 90s poser. That's what you are.
Exactly.
Like, you're a goddamn poser.
I really did think that his intention was for this to be him to be the Nagito of the game, because Nagito in Danganronpa 2 is this despair obsessed character that's occasionally sabotaging cases and occasionally solving them because he just wants to see how far he can push people. And during his death in Danganronpa 2 is a semi-random weird exploitation of his ultimate lucky student powers that end up having you kill the mole among you, who ends up being the wonderful, delightful Chiaki, who's probably my favorite character in Danganronpa 2. But I thought that like this was a similar, strategy by the developers to have this, to put up the most trustworthy and straightforward student against the student whose practical defining characteristic is that he's an unlikable liar, and having that sort of weird, impossible to solve murder, putting those two against each other. But it's not as good in this game.
Forgive me for asking, because I actually don't really remember it. Maybe I was just speeding through. So Kokichi was revealed as, in fact, the ultimate prankster. That's his official title.
He's the ultimate supreme leader of a group of pranksters that never commit murder.
He tries to purport himself as the supreme leader of the remnants of despair, but really he's the supreme leader of a bunch of jokesters.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew that. It wasn't really clear to me with. I just thought you guys were saying that he was called the ultimate prankster as his official title, and I was like, oh my god, no, I missed that.
No, sorry about that. Sorry.
I don't mean to be pedantic. I just was like, what?
No, you're right. And so Kaito is proven to be the one who killed Kokichi on the press. Kokichi's big elaborate plan to screw everything up has failed. I actually really like the fact that Kaito dies before he is murdered by Monokuma.
Executed.
He's executed.
Yeah,
but
denying Monokuma the satisfaction of the execution was a cool moment.
But this brings up a plot hole, because it's established through all the memories, everybody is slowly regaining their memory in giant air quotes as the game goes on, and everybody remembers that there was a meteorite shower that killed most people on Earth, but it also released a virus. So it's heavily implied that Kaito is sick with the virus. Up until now, they've been doing cutscenes of him coughing up blood, and he ends up dying before he's executed because of the supposed virus. But then we find out that that's all bullshit, and none of this is real, and none of their memories are real. So my question is...
But they did mention that they wanted that... we're just skipping ahead a little bit, that they deliberately implanted a virus into him to make that part of his character.
Okay, so that... All right. I thought... Okay, that's fine. I'm guessing my eyes were glazed over at that point because drool was coming out of my mouth because I couldn't...
It was maybe 2 lines of dialogue. It was... It wasn't set up in a huge way.
Well, so that's the first plot hole I have. Now, the second one leads directly into the final case, where it is established that the first case, which I really like how they do this, they did not solve the first case.
Yes.
I had a big problem with this, but continue, please.
Okay. So it is established that in the first case, when they finally find the mastermind's stronghold, that the mastermind had killed Rantaro. It was not Kaede. Kaede's shot put missed, and so the mastermind, in order to start the killing game, killed Rantaro and basically framed Kaede. And so everything has been based around a lie, which is that Kaede killed Rantaro. Now, Solosi, you're saying you have a problem with this.
Yes. There's sort of 2 moments that shook me the most in this game. First was the reveal that Kaede killed was the killer in the first case, and the second was this. And that's because it just violates all of Danganronpa. Every rule that Danganronpa has seems to be just reversed by this. And I know that Danganronpa V3 is a game about lying, and you could say that having the first murder be a lie is, serves their greater theme, but I don't like that at all. Like the whole point of Danganronpa is this murder game where the murderer goes free, and based on where the murderer goes free if they can get by this trial, and have the entire first murder and trial be a lie just broke the rules in Danganronpa in a way that I felt was unfair. I did not like it one bit.
I think if you don't... I 100% get what you're saying. It plays directly into the big reveal, and I think we're ready to establish the big reveal. Because What's-Her-Face turns out to be the mastermind. The woman that I...
the ultimate...
Yeah, it is revealed to be the cosplayer, which gives her a really cool opportunity to go back and forth between previous Danganronpa characters, which
That was excellent.
I really like that. Every
Yeah.
voice actor showing back up is
That was so
really
cool.
Oh my
Yeah,
God, really good.
I mean, most of the voice actors are actually other characters in V3, so
Right.
they could reprise their role anyway, which was really cool. But yeah, I do love the Ultimate Cosplayer's trick there. It's awesome.
And it's a really good reveal too, because it plays directly into my ultimate fear, pardon the pun, which was that it was going to be like Junko Enoshima again, or a Junko fan.
Yeah, a couple episodes of Random ago, when you were playing this game, and you asked us, "Is it Junko again?" And Derek and I had already finished the game, and I think we both basically said, "Just keep playing, Rob."
Yeah, and I'm like, oh God damn it.
Yeah, but like, I think that's actually a good lie, where you think it's Junko, and then it's just this cosplay mess. I think that's a fun gimmick, and it made the conversations with her in the final trial really entertaining, switching between everybody.
Oh yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it.
He looks like Junko sometimes, is what I was going to say. But
So the big reveal is that they are all on a game show. That the title of the game, Danganronpa V3, which was one of those reveals where I figured it out like 4 seconds before it happened. I went, "Oh no!"
53? Oh
is
my
actually
God.
Danganronpa 53, and that I at this point I think you are either totally on board with this or you are like, "Get me the hell out of this game! I hate it." I ended up kind of loving it. And I know that that's maybe a little surprising. I don't love everything about it. I have a couple of issues. But overall, and I was having this thought process, and I had just finished the game up on the train. Jackie and I went into New York to see a show. So I'd finished it up on the train, and I just started staring out the train when the reveal's happening, like, okay.
What is life?
But I said to her, I'm actually...
Maybe we are.
I'm actually okay with this, because I think a lot of times when something continues to get bigger, okay, one of my favorite franchises ever, Metal Gear, is a perfect example. As they continued to rewrite and retcon Metal Gear to hell and back, eventually you just ended up with a soup of nonsense. And I think Danganronpa was getting close-ish to that. I actually think the anime did a very good job of bringing all the stories together and avoiding that problem. But it sort of feels like it's a deconstruction of the fact that, yeah, we could just keep this thing going over and over again, but eventually it's going to get so ridiculous that the ultimate reveal is going to be was it General Hospital or something that was like, it was all a snow globe.
Saint Elsewhere.
Saint Elsewhere.
Where like it zooms out on the hospital, and then you realize that it's the show's autistic child character looking at a snow globe, and the entire show was in his mind.
Yes, like I think
Bob Newhart's show had a similar dream ending thing. Yeah,
you run the risk of getting to that point. So they definitely use a sledgehammer to drive this issue home. But I kind of like the idea of sort of Metal Gear Solid 2, like thumbing your nose at the audience, like this whole thing was. It really is just it's Sons of Liberty all over again, of just like the idea of control and what is real, and so they're all participants in this show that all had their memories wiped. They all wanted to be on it. They were all huge fans of this show, and society is watching these people kill each other because they want to see hope overcome despair. That is incredibly depressing, but I kind of like it. I'm a bad person.
You're not a bad person. But a kind of confession here. When I reviewed this game, this is kind of a reviewer's confession, but like when I powered through this game, the ending was like a big brick in the face for me. I was a bit like, what? Because the dream sequence, like, this was all a dream / this is all fake. All of it's been fake. Those other 60 hours you put into the 2 other games, all fake. Never happened. All a TV show.
It's a very Star Ocean 3 twist.
It's a very Star Ocean 3 twist. And I was quite gobsmacked in not a very good way. And I have turned around a little bit on it now, and I had to kind of process it when I was writing up my thoughts. I'm like Rob, I do really love some parts of it, but there are some bits that I have issues with. And at the end of the day, this is why we said at the beginning of the podcast, you really need to play 1 and 2, because if you play V3 before 1 and 2, you know the really big series twist, and it kind of spoils the fun of it, of being like, oh shoot, we have to kill people and find out who did it, you know. But yeah, initially a brick in the face, but I'm coming around to it slowly.
Yeah, I think that's one that it's heavy, and it's going to take a lot of digesting and dissection over time. And I mean, I don't think that people who continue to have very strong negative reactions to it are like necessarily wrong, because I totally understand the frustration with feeling like you've been lied to. That's the core theme of the game, is that like they've been lying the whole time. But to have it sort of retroactively apply to 2 games before that, it's like, what the F? Seriously? So I mean, that's not even getting into the entire like meta commentary of, you guys are the assholes who keep asking for this stuff, so you want more? Fine. This is what you're going to get. And like, this is the result of your demand.
It is true.
I'm behind that. I agree with that 100%.
That's some like too. Herman Melville, Bartleby the Scrivener nonsense. And I
that's great reference.
I'm just full of crazy references today. But the thing, I appreciate the insane left turn that this twist is, but I mean, looking back at it, it feels like it trivializes the entire rest of the franchise.
Yep.
Then also makes you think again, wait a second, what if the rest of the franchise is real Danganronpa, and this show is lying again by just following the events of I don't know. I don't think you can draw any hard conclusions about the world about the canon of Danganronpa from this, because by its very nature the game is lying to you nonstop.
Yep.
So in a way, I hope that this is the last Danganronpa game, and instead of more Danganronpa, they make something else that's kind of like Danganronpa.
I think I totally agree. And so the 3 points that I wanted to bring up here, Solosi, you hit the first one. This allows them to either completely walk away from Danganronpa and make something new, or to just do, like Alana said earlier, let's do Danganronpa 40. Like let's do it like 10 years in the past and just do another Danganronpa.
Well, guess what? Danganronpa 53.
I want to play a Danganronpa game where you're the killer. And you're actually trying to murder someone. But then again, it's been established in other podcasts that I love murdering Japanese teenagers.
But like we all, I think everybody on this, and I'm not going to go into spoilers obviously because we're not talking about that franchise. But I think we all came away a little down on Zero Time Dilemma. I think that game kind of strained and struggled to bring a trilogy to a satisfying conclusion in a lot of ways. And I'm super happy to hear that crew is working on something entirely brand new. And so I feel very similarly about Danganronpa. Like, I would really like them. It maybe be set in the same universe or something, but do something completely different. This is very freeing for you guys. You can walk away from it. And then they'll probably do the Metal Gear Solid 5 thing of just like, nope, we're just going to do more of it. But like, I want them to do something different. So that's the first thing, is I really like that this is a clear break. Second off is a question that I have, because I did not understand this plot point at all, and I don't know if it's bad localization or bad storytelling. Rantaro is established as the ultimate survivor. He survived the last Danganronpa, but it feels like the game can't decide, did he win the last Danganronpa or did he sacrifice himself at the end of the last Danganronpa? And I started getting super confused, because it was like, wait, if I vote for you, you get executed, but we live, but then we go for... Wait, what? Like, I got really confused at the end of the game for, like, what would a vote even do?
So it was a very similar... Sorry. It was a very similar situation to the end of this trial, I believe, from what I understand, what I remember. So I believe Rantaro and one other character in Danganronpa 52 were given the same sort of choice that the characters in the final trial for V3 are given. So they're like, are you going to sacrifice yourself for hope? Or to let hope win, which would lead to them dying, and something like that. And obviously they make the right decision, and Rantaro is given the title of Ultimate Survivor and is told you can go on the next one, or you have to go on the next one, which is the same question that's posed to the three characters who aren't Kibo and Shirogane. So that's what I take away from it. So I guess he kind of won. I don't really know. You can't really win Danganronpa.
I don't understand, because if you win, aren't you still? I mean, like, statistically, you can't win forever, probably, right? Like, so all it does is prolong your suffering until the next game. What the hell?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe this casts a weird dark shadow over the greater world of Danganronpa V3. My interpretation was that he successfully killed someone and fooled them at the trial in Danganronpa Season 52.
Oh wow! I hadn't even gone down that road with a thought process.
Because if it ended similar to V3, like Alana's describing, wouldn't there be more than one survivor?
Right. That's why I was so confused, because they made it sound like if the other people during the trial at the end of V3, if they sacrificed themselves, they would go back and be new, like, ultimate survivor. That plot point is completely borked. Like, it doesn't make sense, and I don't know if it's a translation issue or if it's a bad storytelling issue, but that was not clear to me at all.
Yeah, it's not. Okay. They do kind of brush it under the carpet a little bit, but that is, I mean, I hadn't even thought about Salosi's kind of idea, but
I hadn't either.
The way that I took it upon it, that it was the same kind of conclusion as V3, and I believe that might actually be canon. That's what I've read.
Yeah, and I'm doing some background Googling, and it looks like my assumption was incorrect. Even though
I like your assumption.
I do. I
kind of like my version. I kind of like my version.
Because then it would have made sense that Kaede would have assumed that he's the killer. You know, she's clocked onto the idea that, oh my god, we have a mastermind. Because she wouldn't have known he was the survivor of the previous killing game or everything else, but she used instinct to go, oh look, I don't trust this person. I'm going to murder him. And it really boils down to
Rantaro also comes into this killing game with a little bit of background knowledge. Like, he doesn't remember anything, but he's been given one of the monopads, one of the iPad like things with a couple of hints for, like, and one of them is you have to win. You have to win. So I think if you win, you get out, but if you choose to sacrifice yourself at the end, then you just go back into the next season. I'm not sure, but that plot point was screwed up.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this wiki thing that Alana just linked in the chat for us, it's talking about how he chose Hope at the end of the game. Like, the choice was given to Shuichi and co. And he chose Hope, but he didn't actually have to die for it. It just meant that, like, his sacrifice means that he would go on into the next game with his memories erased, and he didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no matter what your interpretation is, though, Danganronpa is just a never-ending cycle of killing and more killing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
go ahead,
I'm really on board. I'm really on board with the. This is like wildly contentious, I know, but I'm actually totally okay with the developers pointing the finger at the audience and saying, this is your fault.
Yes, I'm totally
yes. These games are like incredibly compelling and interesting mysteries, and the entire time it's such a roller coaster. Like, you get really attached and you feel the frustration when they die off and stuff, and like, we want more of that because they're compelling stories, but at the same time they are compelling stories that are fundamentally based around people suffering.
Yep.
So like, for them to
really
say
like that.
Yeah, for them to say, like, you guys, stop. you shouldn't be reveling in the suffering of other human beings. Like, I think that's a really powerful statement, and it actually sort of like recontextualizes the whole franchise in a way. Like, because I don't want to see anybody die and suffer, but damn, those stories are so good. So I'm constantly drawn to them, and then it makes me feel like, am I messed up for wanting this? Like, maybe a little bit. Yeah.
So that plays directly into my third point about the ending to Danganronpa V3. I think this game gets right up to the line of becoming a piece. I don't know how else to say it, so please don't roll your eyes. Let me finish the idea. This gets right up to the line of becoming art, with that indictment of the audience and saying you're going to stop, and the characters all choosing to sacrifice themselves and not choose hope or despair. They're going to give the audience a bad ending that they don't want so that this never happens again. And then at the end credits, it turns out they're all alive. And I was so pissed.
I was pissed too.
That to me was you were about ready to have a mic drop moment of just like, nope, We are done. We have put the audience on notice. This is over. Our characters have chosen for themselves. You're not going to get a satisfying ending, and then the game pusses out.
I was pretty frustrated by that too, because
Yeah.
on a base level, like, yeah, I want to see the characters survive and have hope in their hearts and move on, but I think that it lost a lot of its impact by immediately backpedaling on this really strong
100%
idea.
agree.
Yeah.
100% agree. And
Yeah.
that was a major it is sort of the again, the only game I can think of in a similar fashion, I'm sorry for bringing it up multiple times, is Metal Gear Solid 2. At the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, where Raiden, gets the choice to live his own life, and then he comes back in Metal Gear Solid 4, and he's a cyber ninja, and he's cutting apart geckos.
All right,
Like that.
Continuing my string of very strange references, this reminds me of the ending to an anime that I briefly enjoyed and then hated in the 2000s, called My Hime, which is basically a bunch of schoolgirls are murdering each other for vague reasons, and it's really emotional, and the deaths all seem to matter. But at the last episode, they all get revived and are friends again, and it's like this just ruined the previous 24 episodes.
Yep.
And so,
I won't give away the ending to Cabin in the Woods because I am not a bad person, and if you've never seen that,
Cabin in the Woods' ending.
That's what I'm saying is that Cabin in the Woods makes good on its ending. It throws the gauntlet down and it says, "No, we're going to take a stand." And I think if Danganronpa V3 had been willing to just roll credits and be done, I think people would actually be happier with the ending because it would ring more true. It doesn't ring true at the end, and it leaves the door open for them to do more Danganronpa, and I'm A-okay if this is the end of it.
Like if it was just silence, and then you saw ruined parts of the facility and no audio at all, and then it fades to black.
And then Red 13 comes riding in with his two cubs. Like
it's a black and white Red 13 with multicolored cubs.
Yes, I don't know. I feel like the game, its impact was so amazing, and I was smiling during the credit roll, and then I was just like, man, if you just show them still alive, I'm gonna be
really disappointing, huh? It almost feels like they were too timid to fully commit.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to leave it open. They wanted to leave it open for, well, what if people really want more of it?
It's like, well, maybe our producers want to make another Danganronpa game, but it's like it. Yeah, I think it's a missed opportunity. I agree with Rob.
Yeah, I think we would all be. It maybe wouldn't make you love the ending if you're one of the people that's really upset about it. And again, I agree with Derek. I think if you're upset with this ending, I totally get it. I like endings that challenge people. I like it when you don't have a good ending. I like it when art kind of turns the lens on the audience. So I was on board with this. But again, a lot of that impact is just kind of lost. And that's a shame because I think this had a chance of being a very, very memorable ending. And instead it's kind of cool and cute, but it ultimately, it's a little meaningless because of that last post-credit scene.
Yep.
Little meaningless.
I agree. I mean, not meaningless, but it means less.
Yes, that's a good way. No, that's a very good way. But now I totally understand why you guys were like so controversial on this when it first.
I know.
Came
oh my
out.
god! Like Ultimate. It's funny that I'm saying Ultimate first world problem of being one of the few people to play this before the game came out, as me and Alana were just like, oh my god!
It's so hard. Every time I was like teasing Mike and Peter, who I know, who've been on the Retro Encounter podcast for 1 and 2. I was like, I can't wait till you play this because I just want to spoil everything. But
now
I can't.
Now you know how I felt when I had played Danganronpa 2 and you and Peter were playing that for the first time, and I was like teasing you in texts and in Slack, but yeah,
the phone.
Yeah, exactly. But there's so much to talk about this ending, and it's like the circumstances of the final trial are kind of amazing, and then the ending goes in such a weird place. You want to immediately talk about it with other people the moment you finish it, which is exactly why this podcast is being recorded.
It made me feel really uncomfortable as not a person, but as a gamer, like Derek said, we want more and more. It's pointing the finger at us ultimately, and I just, that whole way through, because of the lying mechanic, because of the fact that the first trial was ultimately a lie, because Kaede had lied to us, and she believed her lie, She didn't know she was lying. It's just
Right.
the entire experience. Playing it in 6 days was not enough for me to absorb it, and over time it's gradually sunk in, and I kind of had to step back and go, that's really quite good actually. But yeah, just I don't think I've ever felt more uncomfortable playing a game than I did getting to the end of Danganronpa and V3 until obviously they weren't dead. So
Yeah.
It's an audacious game. It is willing to say something, and I think Derek kind of glibly alluded to it a few minutes ago. They're already talking about a new Danganronpa project, so I'm like, God,
No, really?
yeah,
I didn't know about that.
If they call it Danganronpa and make it totally different, no Monokuma, no Junko, new setup, I'd be okay with that. But if it's another game like the first 3 Danganronpa games, not including Ultra Despair Girls, then I would that would be a disappointment to me.
yeah,
me too.
they've already said they're working on something. I just like when they start saying this is all Team Danganronpa's fault. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cute. Like that's
a good way of framing it.
yeah, it's cute and I like it. Also, just hearing Monokuma screaming Danganronpa over and over again was like really surreal. When he's just like Danganronpa, like okay, this is getting weird. Also, some of those last couple challenges of like shooting the hope bullets, that crap was really hard on the Vita. I was getting really pissed off.
With the split argument, with like split it into 3, it was ridiculous, wasn't it?
It was a very. I was playing on normal the whole time, both for logic and dexterity or whatever the 2 settings are, and I didn't get a game over, but it got really close. It was some challenging. Some challenging trial segments at the end, which is good. I like a challenging, like a finale of a game should be challenging, but man, woof.
Those taxi sections can go to hell though. I hate that stuff. Like
They're not as bad.
Cool vibe, but boring.
Yeah, they're not as bad as Logic Dive for definite. It's an improvement, but yeah, it's not. They're still not incredibly good.
I didn't like the mine mini game. I failed that one time just because like I just got very unlucky with how everything G'd up, and I didn't have the ability where you could crack one of the squares and not lose time. So like I had to crack like 15 squares, and I ended up losing. And I was like, oh,
I
that
really
sucks.
like the word association game where you line up into 2 sides that yell at each other.
I like that too.
It's like the visual effect of having the podiums rise up and line up together and then yelling at each other with this really dramatic back and forth it was maybe a pretty easy mini game, but it had a really cool visual impact for me. It was like my favorite part of every trial.
I think that was also the best integration of story and gameplay. Where I think Danganronpa's had a very big problem with story and gameplay. Like we talked about the taxis sections, we talked about the logic dives. Those moments have always been the weakest for me, and I think John McCarroll, when he reviewed it for our site, he mentioned that too. But you're right. The split argument is like every piece.
That's what it was called. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when everything comes together. And also the music during those sections was just killer.
So good.
Like, that was really good.
I've got to say, this is the best soundtrack in the entire series. It's so good.
It is really good. I wouldn't mind if they did something of a similar style of like solving mysteries, but I think the core tenets of Danganronpa, the killing game with 16 high school students, I think it's time for that to be over. Like,
yeah, I want them to make a game like Danganronpa, but not Danganronpa.
Yes.
Where people don't have to die, or just like
a mystery puzzle solving game with over the top characters and high stakes at least.
Okay.
Or high feeling stakes, but it doesn't necessarily have to be about, Japanese high school students killing each other, even though that is a favorite genre.
Yeah, I almost don't know how they'll make the stakes feel as high if they have a past history of doing this, right?
Yeah, really.
It was
as long as they get me to love characters and then rip it away from me by killing one of the characters.
I think in the end I like Danganronpa 2 the most because of the implications that it had to the world, but I actually didn't enjoy playing that game all that much. Like the last trial in 2 like blew my mind and all the reveals were great. but I didn't actually like that game all that much because it felt so separate. Like the entire time I was playing, I was like, "What the hell's going on?" Like I like one of them's a robot now. Like I don't even know what the hell's going on. I don't know how this relates to the first game, and I don't really care. But then that reveal at the end, and then what they did in the anime to further establish it was really, really cool. So.
Cell phone in that final trial, the giant cell phone
broke my head. Yeah,
yep.
But what we said at the beginning was that the middle chapters in the Danganronpa franchise tend to be like, just trailing along, like room, murder, this is what happens. You already interacted with this. Danganronpa 2 is that for the entire game, but the last chapter. But the last chapter almost makes up for the entire game, pretty much. I would say V3 is probably my least favorite in the entire series, maybe because I have a couple more issues. I don't love the characters as much as I do in the other two games. They actually felt like the weakest overall for me.
Okay.
But there's only really like 2 or 3 that I take away that I love. So Momota, Kibo, who we've hardly spoken about actually, and Kaede / Shuichi, but yeah. But 1 and 2 are like equal. So I say it's my least favorite, but 1 and 2 are like equal good.
You mean Kibo, the Nier character that found his way into Danganronpa?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean that character. I mean 9S, of course.
Did we talk about in a previous podcast how Kibo's name is just the Japanese word for hope?
K1B. Really?
Yeah, the Japanese word for hope. Kibo, like K-I-B-O-U, Kibo, and his name is K1B0, Kibo.
You said it. I remember you sending it to me in a Slack message. You're like, why didn't I see it? Why didn't I get it?
I know. and he's like, sort of this emblematic of hope at the end. It's just like, holy crap.
Yeah,
I did know that, but only because in the Danganronpa 3 anime they say all of the Danganronpa anime they say the word Kibo over and over.
Yeah,
that's why I knew.
I don't know how I feel about Kibo, like the idea of him being the audience, like the way the audience can interact with the show. I feel like there was no hints at that until the very end, and then with the whole like his antenna looking exactly like both of the previous protagonists' hair, like I don't know how I feel like that. I think that there's a more clever way of integrating him into the game, and I don't feel like it really made good on it. Like if there had been hints of that for the rest of the game, I might have been on board, but there weren't.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
I like him a lot, but like that reveal doesn't ring as hard as the other reveals in the game. It's weird.
It's like they have to do it because, you know what, why not? This is how we're going to get the audience involved. Oh, it's Kibo the whole time, you know. It's just like, why didn't you like drop any hints? But I suppose that is the flaw, like we've touched on before. The middle chapters don't really refer to anything else. Like they just don't drop anything. And if they had done that, you might have gone, hang on a minute, something's going on way earlier, and that's what they didn't want to do. But yeah, I do think initially I liked the reveal, but I think out of all of them, it's probably one of the weaker implemented ones in that final chapter, regardless of how dorky Kibo is and kind of, I'm not a robot kind of thing.
That's robophobic.
Robophobic.
He's I think in the end the first game is probably my favorite just because I was enthralled the whole way for that first game, even though I did get a little antsy during those middle sections, whereas the other two games I felt a little bit of a slog. Like I had to kind of grit my teeth like, all right, I'm not going to get any story reveal for about 3 cases. I might as well just keep plugging away at this. But I do like the audaciousness of V3, like that game. We all just thought it was crazy Japanese naming conventions. Like the same reason why, like when I was a kid, I'm going, why is it called Sailor Moon R? I don't know. Just deal with it.
I thought this was a Kamen Rider reference because the third Kamen Rider show is called Kamen Rider V3. So I thought,
of course,
of course, that's why I thought that. And I even figured that Kibo would figure into the end game because for some reason I thought it would be like Mew and Kibo, inventor and robot, kind of being the masterminds. But
at what point do they have sex? At one point, do they have sex? It is heavily implied that those two people get it on.
It is heavily implied that she works on him, like roves, tinkers with him or something. And the language that they say to each other during that is quite double entendreific.
You gotta oil your joints every once in a while. Is all I'm saying.
Hey man, I'm right there with it.
Lubrication is important.
So I think we're pretty much good on Danganronpa V3. Anybody final thoughts? Final thoughts.
I think it's the best one mechanically. Its final reveal is amazing but controversial, but I like the characters in 1 and 2 better.
Yeah, I felt like a few of them maybe were a little close to being like they replicated some of the things. Like we had Kyoko Kirigiri, the ultimate detective. So I was like, why is there another ultimate detective? And they sort of explain that with the fact that everybody in V3 is just sort of like a character playing a role. But yeah, like overall, I think there were some stronger characters in the earlier ones. Thank God there was no Mikon in this one. Oh my God. But we did have what's her name?
Right.
Yeah, the nurse.
Oh, she was so disappointing.
The one who just keeps falling down and showing upskirt shots. Yeah, that got a little.
And then she gets all weird and fetishistic during the third case. That was I don't like Mikon a lot.
No.
Anyway, yeah. I think this one is really good overall, though, and it's memorable for damn sure.
Oh yeah, that ending is going to stick with you for a while.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's got an impact, and it's got something to say, which is kind of a nice thing for 2017 and video games in general. Really, like it's definitely got that big impactful like sit down, you have to play this game, and I think Danganronpa as a series is really, really, really worth playing. All 3 games, maybe space them out a little bit. You can watch the anime as well. They are heavy games, but they've definitely got something to add to the particular genre that it's promoting, and yeah, I love it.
I wish more people got a chance to experience the ending of this game, but it is kind of hard for me to justify somebody play between 90 and 120 hours to get to that ending.
Yeah.
Because you kind of have to play all 3 to really appreciate like all the wardrobe switching at the end of V3 and the ultimate reveal. Oh God, we keep saying ultimate over and over.
I think we said this at the beginning, but you definitely have to play the first 2 games before playing this one, and it's in a way it's a marvelous cap off to the whole series. So I hate to be a broken record, but I sort of hope this is the last proper Danganronpa game.
Are you saying that you are hoping that it overcomes despair and we don't see another Danganronpa V3 or Danganronpa in general?
I don't know, man. I'm the ultimate Sentai fanboy. I probably died in the second case.
Next one's going to be Danganronpa 104. It's just like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
This is like back when Mega Man X came out, and I just assumed that I missed 3 Mega Man games.
I know, right?
Like I was really confused because the Game Boy ones all used Roman numerals, but the NES ones all used regular numbers.
Yep.
And Mega Man X came out before Mega Man 7, so I was whatever. Mega Man X is better anyway.
Yeah, Mega Man X is great.
Speaking of which, they're supposed to unveil a Mega Man X collection, I think, pretty soon.
Cool. Because they did the Mega Man Legacy collection, which was
not on
successful.
Switch yet, which is like what the hell.
I know, but they're having a Mega Man 30th anniversary thing at the PlayStation Experience next week.
If they announce an X9 and an X collection side by side, I may die on the spot, and you'll need to replace someone as the host of Retro Encounter.
We can do
Best
that.
case scenario. We don't want to replace you.
So yeah, I think we kind of reached the end of the podcast. This was something a little different. I don't know if the fans really want us to do more spoiler casts. I'm kind of on board for doing it. I'm in the middle of playing Nier, and oh boy, am I going to have some things to say about that game. I'm pretty sure.
That game seems like worthy of a spoiler cast, I think.
Yeah. I'd love to do a spoiler cast with you again, because that's another game I reviewed, and I really, really like the game.
I've liked it so far, and I like how crazy it is. So, listeners, if you really like this, please let us know, and maybe we will do more of these spoiler encounters. I think this was a lot of fun, and I try to be careful with spoilers, and I put the bumper at the front of the last episode of Random because we talked a little bit about Mario Odyssey. But I think this kind of lets us get around that a little bit, and we can kind of let loose and have fun. And I bet you, hopefully, I don't get one email saying you ruined Danganronpa V3. It's like, dude, I like
it says spoiler encounter right in the title.
That's the point. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening, and for Derek, Mike, and Alana, we'll see you all later.
See ya. Ultimate despair.
Don't lose hope.
Cute. All right.